Hi everyone. This is just an in-depth look at the Suzuka track. I'm just in a time trial at the moment. I just put down some laps just to get a clean lap to film on. Best was a 54.2. Now this part of the track's relatively quite important. You've got to get a clean exit out of this corner. If you get a lot of wheel spin or you run wide in this second chicane into the start of the lap, it compromises you all through this main straight. You lose a lot of time. So just get off cleanly. It doesn't have to be spectacular, but just nice and clean. Now here's probably one of the most important corners on the track. Just let it show it in fast motion. It looks relatively simple, but it's actually quite complex. What you've got to do is, on initial turn-in, which is after the 50-meter marker, you're turning the car in, but you're not actually bothering about that first apex. That first apex isn't important. It's getting the second apex that's important. So after you, so you turn in on the throttle, still on throttle, just slightly lifting, but I never go completely off until here. And what you sort of want to do is, after you get past that first apex, you let the car get in the brakes around here, and the car will skate out wide on the brakes. So you want to carry the brakes out until the car hits the outside curb. Now once you get to that outside curb, you want to release off the brakes and start to turn the car back in. Now you have to pick your momentum kind of on the entry into the first apex, because that determines the whole corner. You've got to skate it out to the outside curb on the brakes and then cut it back in and make sure you get into that inside apex. Like that, and then be careful on the throttle and exit. If you're carrying too much corner at the mid-corner mark, what you'll find is you have to overslow the car, which will unsettle it, and then you'll probably slide slightly wide. And if you slide wide of this second apex, you can lose a bit of time. So you've got to sort of flow it as one motion. It's a really hard corner complex because there's three elements to it. Like you have to pick your entry speed into the first part of the corner. You've got to control the braking into the outside curbing. And then once you get to the outside, you've got to get the car back in with the right momentum into the inside curb and accelerate out, but not too far out. All putting the corner together. Now, once you get this, you want to get straight back to the right. Now I'm staying in fourth. You're easing the throttle a little bit on entry, just to get it into that apex cleanly. Now I'm not shifting up to fifth, even though it is hitting the rev limiter. There's just not enough hitting for it to make sense to upshift, and it unsettles the car, having to get it back down in a few corners. So you just have to hit the apexes here. You go late apex into this corner, cut back sort of to the right, into the apex, and back to the left. Make sure you get back into the apex again, just waiting on the throttle, then cut and flat through here. Turn the car out wide. So through these corners, you've just got to kind of control it on the throttle and make sure you get into all the apexes. Now you're just modulating the throttle to stop the front end understeering. But the second, if you push wide on one of those corners, it's a sequence, and basically the whole sequence is out. Like you start to have to cut back and play catch up, and from that point you're probably not going to get the car back in. Like you're going to be offline through this entire sequence of four corners. So from the very first apex, it's very important here to get into this first apex, to set it all up, which gives me a good entry into the second apex, which then flows through. Now on exit here, you want to use initially all the available track, but you don't want to leave it out for too long. So because I'm not braking 20, I'm going flat and just throwing the car in, it will want to push out to the outside of the track, but you've got to just let it go out, maybe touch the curbing, but not necessarily, depends on your line, and then bring it straight back in. Because if it's tempting to leave it out on the outside, but you're out in track distance. Now through here, you want to brake pretty much exactly on the 50-meter marker, like it's... So you get into the 50-meter mark, straight on the brakes, just slightly. You're not slowing the car down too much, and throwing it in, getting the front right just right next to the curb, but don't get up on the curb. So the front right's kind of understeering towards that white line. Now you have to overslow the car quite a bit for this second apex. It's deceptive because you feel like you just want to throw it in, but just the way the camber of the corner works and the angle, if you throw it in, it just pushes it out wide. So I prefer just to overslow it. You want to get the front wheel right down close to the inside curbing and maybe up on it a little bit. It depends on the nature of your setup to give you a good flow through that corner. Now I'm coming up to a very important hairpin. Now I brake deep into this corner, although people do take different lines into here. I'm looking at that telegraph pole on the right there and braking slightly after it. Now, in kind of shooting past the corner a little bit and turning it in to a late apex. In that instance, I'm not hitting the apex, but it just kind of depends, like how you get into the braking and how accurate you are on the brakes and how tight to the apex you get. It will depend on how close you get into the apex. You never want to clip the inside curb, but you can get rather close to it if you want to. So braking, kind of shooting past and bringing it back in for good acceleration out. Now through here is just flat, there's nothing to it, you're just holding it on the right hand side. Now spoon's one of the corners you can lose a lot of time. You want to take it kind of like as one big apex. You don't want to sort of break it up into two corners, it all has to flow together as a momentum. So on entry, you're entering up the spoon. I'm looking and I'm seeing the service road there, and I'm just braking after it down one gear and throwing the car in, not clipping the inside curb, letting it go right out to the side, all momentum. Now around mid corner, I've got to get straight back on the brakes just to slow it a little bit for the second apex. Just a tiny bit of braking. Now that settles it. Now you've got to slow the car so you can get it back into the first apex. It's very easy to let it run wide, and if you run wide you lose time down the whole straight, and quite often you get caught in the outside curb. So I've slowed the car enough, and I'm just bringing it into the angle, into the inside apex. And then when I get back on the throttle, the car's pushing out to the outside curbing, but not getting up on either of those curbs significantly. Just kind of sliding between them. Now spoon takes a lot of confidence, and you do just get better, but after a while you're just absolutely flinging the car in there, down one gear in the first apex, down two gears in the middle apex, on the braking, hug it left to the second apex of curb and accelerate hard out. Looks quite fast in fast motion. Well and smooth. Of course, just flat down the back straight, 130R in this car is not a problem. Just turn into the apex. Now here's one of the most inconsistent parts of the track. Now what I'm doing is I'm looking at the 100 meter marker and I'm braking quite a bit after it, between the 100 meter marker and that sign. Now you're braking quite hard here. I'm nearly engaging full braking motion on entry. Just being careful not to lock it. Now what you've got to do is you've got to brake hard, then you've got to release the brake as you throw it into the apex. So you're gradually getting off the brake and you're carrying basically all the momentum up, and you're aiming sort of for that curb, but not far up on it. You've got to just get the car up and over the corner of it a little bit, as that will not bounce it so much. Then you've got to get back to the left. Now I don't like taking too much left curb. I know, well, I don't know, but I bet some people would, because it's tempting. But I just find it throws the car a little bit too much. It's uncomfortable. So once you go over the initial curb, I kind of cut wide a bit and cut back and get the front wheel up into the apex, but don't get on that curbing a little bit. So you get the wheel into the apex. And you're modulating the throttle a bit through there. Like I had to take 2 stabs at the throttle. Initially off a little bit to control the wheel spin, then back on, because it will lose the back wheels a bit over there, and you just run down the inside up to the finish line. Now this final chicane's a little bit daunting because like you put in a good lap and it's very easy just to make a stupid error there and throw the whole lap away. That's at 24.2. It's around this track you've got to run the aero balance really far forward. I've actually got the braking balance set quite a long way back. I like the brakes more on the front end, but I've got it set to 54% balance just to give the car a bit of rotation on the entry into the fast corners. Every little bit of front end you can counts. You've just got to play with it in your setup. Take wing off, take wing off, take rear wing off, sorry, until you get to the point where the front turns super aggressively, but you're not sliding the rear through the corners. And there will be a point that you hit that with a bit of practice, like a half a degree of wing angle will be the difference between it sliding too much and it having too much understeer. And once you get to that point, you can really start to push around here and feel comfortable. And here's just a lap in fast forward, fast motion, sorry.